You are listening to the Becoming the Wealthy You podcast with Jermaine Foley. If you're a woman who makes good money in your career or business, but you're not building wealth like you want to, then you're in the right place. In this podcast, you'll learn how to stop overspending, break free from the cycle of debt, save lots of cash, and become the wealthy woman you were born to be. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Nicole Stanley, and she is the owner and head money coach at Arise Financial Coaching. Her mission is to help successful women have more money and more choices to really be able to live the lives that they want to live. Nicole paid off a significant amount of debt. As a Latina entrepreneur and a personal finance expert, she grew her net worth through investing. And so we are just so excited. I am so excited to have you here, Nicole, to talk about your story, talk about all of the tools and concepts you help your clients with. So welcome to the show.
So excited to be here. I am excited to talk more about tips that you guys can take away.
Awesome. So why don't we just start with you? I know I gave your bio, but I'm sure it's more to it than what I said. Can you just tell us a little bit about you and why you're so passionate about helping successful women have more money and more choices?
Yeah. So I started in the personal finance world as a kid, really. I grew up in a, Puerto Rican American household where we were upper middle class. But even though my father was really successful, he was a software engineer, we still had a lot of stress behind closed doors. And so I remember realizing from a young age that it didn't necessarily matter how much money I made, that financial stress could still very much so be in control of everything. And I tried to ignore that reality until I got married. It started to rear its ugly head. So I got married very young, and I was the one who told my parents, we're in love. Money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we don't make any money, right? We were, young and naive. And so it wasn't until we were planning our wedding, I was freshly 22, and I actually started having regular panic attacks while planning our wedding and doing the numbers over and over again and realizing, these numbers aren't adding up. And I remember looking at my soon-to-be husband and saying, if we can't afford this wedding where our friends are doing the drinks and the flowers, how the hell are we going to afford a life together? And it was kind of then that I realized, if I wanted to figure out this money thing, I needed to be a little bit more intentional because I wasn't starting with a lot to work with. So it was then that we kind of dove into the personal finance world. We enrolled in our first course, started learning, and I became just the biggest personal finance nerd you've ever met in your life, just reading everything. And it was very empowering because learning about finance taught me, something very different than I grew up observing, which was, my parents telling me, if you want to be successful, you need to be one of three things: an attorney, a doctor, or an engineer, and there's really no other options. And so I was, kind of coming in to my young marriage with a little bit of brat energy, and I wanted to prove them wrong. So I was like, I'm going to figure out how to make our very small salary work. So when we first got married, my husband was a youth minister. I was working at an entry-level sales job. We weren't really rolling in the dough. But once we started to learn about these concepts of investing, paying off high interest debt, money mindset, things really began to change for us because we realized, we can make a lot of progress very quickly. And I know you shared a little bit about it in my bio, but we paid off a significant amount of debt quickly, started investing. And then by age 27 with 2 kids, we hit a really cool milestone that was, I would say, the one I'm the most proud of, which is where we had invested enough money in our own retirement that we knew that even if we never added another dollar, we would still be able to retire comfortably. And that brought this weight like I had never experienced off my shoulders, because I watched my family kind of always feel like, you're going to work till the day you die. And being a young mom and saying, wow, like financial education has changed everything for me. It was then that I started to help friends and family prioritize investing, prioritize budgeting, overcoming their money mindset, limiting beliefs. And a few years later, after coaching friends and family for free, I realized, oh, this is a whole industry. I can get more training. I can learn how to do this even better. And it became a little bit like a drug where I wanted to help more people unlock that confidence in themselves. And that's when Arise Financial Coaching was born in 2020. Since then, we've helped over 600 clients improve their relationship and results with money. So I am still the same girl who just doesn't shut up about it.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. So you and I both, we both coach women around money. And while our missions are very much aligned, I'm sure we both bring our own spin to it, our own tools and concepts and things like that. So when you first sit down to work with someone, where do you usually start with them? What comes first?
So I'm a big believer in, plans are amazing, but if your plans aren't based on reality and what is actually going on in your life already, they're often going to be very aspirational and not real. So we always start our process with what we call the Arise Financial Coaching audit, or in other words, like a money snapshot, where we like to take the data of someone of, where has their money been going over the past year to really find, okay, what are the true things holding them back? Because it's not always a spending problem. It's not always an income problem. Like, people have these ideas of why they're not hitting their financial goals. And I find that the numbers always tell us the real story. But most of the time people feel very emotionally charged about what is keeping them, stuck financially. So we always start there, because if we can build a plan with someone that's based on their actual spending, not based on what I think they should be spending or what they think they should be spending, we're much more likely to have success, right? Because then they're able to build a plan that's very similar to their lifestyle today, if not better, because we're using their money better. And then I find that to be the best place to start. What about you? Where do you usually start with clients?
Well, we usually start with figuring out what their values are, like what's most important. And then we decide, okay, these are the things that are most important to you. Now let's look at the numbers. Do they match? Yeah. And that's a big aha moment. They're like, yeah, financial security is a value that I have, yet I'm not prioritizing that with my finances. And then we definitely do a spending audit and things like that. So I find, and I'm curious if you find this, that a lot of people are a little nervous to do the spending audit or the audit, right? And I think that is a great segue into one of the things you talk about a lot, which is financial anxiety. So do you find that people are a little reluctant to do the audit, but once they do it, they just feel so much relief and empowerment? But I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
No, I agree with you. It's actually part of our onboarding process where I explained to a client that, like, they're going to do the prep work for we call our first session the Empower session. And so, you're going to do your prep work. It's going to feel like a lot. This might be the first time you're seeing these numbers. And we like to really set the mindset around it too, that it's not about blaming. It's not about there being a right or a wrong, because there is no right or wrong when it comes to where your money's going. All it is data, right? It's very different than thinking about it as something you should feel ashamed about, but rather this is something that we're just taking a look at. It's a starting place. It's not our ending place. So the mindset going into it. And then the second part is we tell them that it's very normal right before the session to actually get this like dread or that wave of panic, because when we feel exposed, it's very, very normal to feel like I don't want to show that to someone else, let alone myself. Right. And I think that that's really the biggest reason why people feel nervous about a spending audit, is because they're nervous about seeing it for themselves. Right. And one of the ways that I like to reframe that is, when we are stuck financially, or when we're not getting the results we want financially, it can either just be this big dark cloud, which has no answers, which for some, I think is actually comforting, because if they don't know the reason why they're stuck, then it's very easy to just kind of be like, oh, woe is me. It's like, I'm stuck here, right? But then once you see clearly the data, most people don't need you or I to tell them, here are some options or here are some ideas of how we could fix this. People naturally are smart for themselves, right? Like they start to see, they start to have ideas. And I think that's actually the scary part, because it's easier to be in a place where you don't start to see solutions, because then you actually have to be accountable to start doing those solutions. And I think that that's why people feel relief, is because once they go through it, they realize, wow, this was actually like way worse in my head than
I
I
know.
thought, right? Like I've been avoiding this for a decade. For
Yes.
what?
It's interesting because sometimes they're like, there's no way I have this much left over. I'm like, yeah, it is. And they feel like there is just this weight that has just been lifted. So talk to me a little bit more about, or the audience more so, about financial anxiety and where you really think that comes from. Because I think that for sure, our stories are very similar. I paid off over $200,000 worth of debt, and I heard you talk about when you were looking at the numbers for your wedding, you were just like, this is not working. This math is not mathing. And for me, it was when I had two kids in daycare, and
Oh,
that daycare bill was the exact amount as our mortgage. And I was just, that's when the stress, I felt the stress and the overwhelm for years and I ignored it. But then when that happened, when I had two kids in daycare, it was like, you can't ignore this anymore. You have to do something about it. But that was when I was stressing and had the anxiety. So tell us more about that.
yeah. For me, it was way more low key, because I feel like I had to confront it much younger than when I had children, when feel like it would have been a lot easier for me to take action. But because I felt I didn't feel isolated when I first got married, but I did feel that pressure of knowing that my father felt, that we weren't really prepared for it. And so I kind of felt like I had to put on this
Mm-hmm.
charade, um, to those around me, specifically my family, because I knew I had made the right character decision in the person that I married, but we also had these logistical things that we needed to work through. And so I think my anxiety was that I wanted to do everything perfectly, because I was afraid of like my image falling apart.
Yeah.
Right? Especially, I think this sounds very bratty, but my dad had a very immigrant mindset. And so he came stateside from Puerto Rico to give us a better life. And he gave us, in many ways, such a better life. And he taught me so many skills, like even, he helped me avoid student debt, not just in him helping me with my board costs, but he forced me to stay in state where I had a scholarship when I wanted to be a kid who was, oh, I want the college dream. I want to go here. Right. And I thank him so much for that savvy, because it saved me a lot, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got married to someone who had made a different decision in his schooling. I could not let anyone know that I was stressed about our student debt or what became our student debt. And, that anxiety showed up in the way that I worked. So I worked a cold call sales job to bring in extra money. I carried stress. It was like every day, every call, every hang up, it was like I could feel the weight of the debt, which in my mind was like, it's as much as your annual salary. It's as much, right? Like it was
Mm-hmm.
just screaming at me. And I remember that it wasn't just in the way that I worked, it was in the way that I relaxed too. Because when we relaxed, everything was around, okay, well, if we're going to go out to eat, it's got to be cheap. So, you're looking at the menu and you're thinking, okay, how can I get the cheaper thing? Or how can I go to Starbucks with a friend who invited me, but get a tea, right? Like financial anxiety has a way of just
Being
creeping into
everywhere.
everything. And
Yes.
I look back to at our wedding, and it's like one of the most stressful memories of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
here was what was supposed to be the happiest day, right? That I got to marry my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it got clouded by financial anxiety. And that's kind of how I frame financial anxiety, as this intrusive interrupter of our lives. It interrupts us in the biggest moments that are supposed to be joyful, like a wedding, buying a house, having kids, like going on vacation. I want more people to know that financial anxiety is something that you can work to defeat with the right tools, with the right plan, with the right mindset. But it doesn't have to be something that you just accept. This is me forever. And I think that's why that course, when we first enrolled, was just so transformational, because I grew up in a household seeing, well, this is normal. This is what everybody feels all the time. And for the first time, it was like, whoa, what if I chose a different type of normal? Right. And I'd be curious, like, what was that for you?
Oh my gosh. So for us, it was, I took probably the same course you took, I'm assuming.
Which one was it? PU?
Of course it was. Of course it was. And it was interesting because I was so ready. Like, I was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Yeah, my husband was like, we can't live like that. And so for me, it was the financial anxiety kind of went away when I came to a point of, I teach something called the do both method, which is build wealth and enjoy life at the same time. And once that clicked for me, like, oh, because I used to think, just like you said, this is just life. This is just my lot in life to struggle with money. And then once I had like the money tools that we learned from the course, plus this idea that I'm going to figure out how to do it in a way that's sustainable, that I don't have to like hate my life, where my husband and I can still have dates and our kids can still vacation sometimes. And so that's when the financial anxiety started to go away. But we had a plan. I think once you have a roadmap and a plan and you see the light at the end of the tunnel, the anxiety starts to dissipate. But you mentioned something that I want to really circle back around, because I think a lot of my listeners can relate to this. You talked about the charades you were putting on. And I think so many successful women are putting on this facade. They are living, because on the outside looking in, they look like they have it all together. They have the career, the business, they drive the car, the house, they have the family. You may have been like that. I know I was that person that everybody thought had it all together, but inside it was like this secret, this shameful secret that I have, and shame makes you hide. So how do you help people kind of break out of that shame and to stop playing the charades and just get to the bottom of what's going on?
I think it's great that you bring that up, because shame is so it's just so like it's like I almost get like claustrophobic when you think about it, right? Because nobody can hear, nobody can know. And when I think about when you come out of shame, there's a few things that always have to happen. The first is you have to normalize the feeling. And I think that's why conversations like this, having really close friends who are honest about their financial situations, that's step number one. Because what you begin to learn is that, you and I know this because we work with these women all the time, is that many successful women are successful in their careers and successful in their life and feel behind or stressed about their money. That is very normal. And I think that's because, you either have a parent who teaches you about money, or you have to learn on your own. Nobody is just born knowing everything about money. And so women have to give themselves a little bit of grace. It's even like when you become a mom for the first time, like you think like, I should just know how to become a mom. And then you're like going to breastfeeding classes and you're like, why do I have to learn about this? This is supposed to be the most natural thing in the world. And it's like, there are things that we need to be taught, right, to get better at. And so it's very normal for successful women to feel not successful with money, which means if it's normal, then that means it's also normal to learn about it, right? That's step number one. And then the next thing is if you can give yourself that same grace when you view your journey about learning, right? But if you can give yourself that same grace, one of the mindsets I like to, instill into my clients, especially if they start to go into this very negative, self-critical place, is I like to ask them, if they have children, this is a good one, or if they have good friends, that it's, if you had a good friend that you love and respect and they were going through this, what would you tell them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we often we know how to be compassionate and we know how to see problems as something that are fixable and not something that makes us unworthy. And I think that if we can look at ourselves with that lens, it allows us to do the work of learning about it. Because when we're stuck in the shame, it stays in the dark.
Yep.
We can't learn the skills to come out of it. So we have to figure out a way to normalize what we're feeling and then to give ourselves compassion as we come out of it. Because that's really the coolest part about financial stories is that they're all underdog transformational stories. But if you're not willing to look at your money, you can't have your, blow up because you're stuck in this shame-filled place. So it's, that's usually how I approach it.
Love it.
I'm curious, how do you help your clients do that?
Well, one of the ways, even my listeners, I like having these conversations because it shows them that they're not alone.
Yes.
Right? Because I think that's the problem. To your point, most people think that they're the only ones struggling, right? And they should have figured this money thing out by now and everything else is going well. So they've got a lot of shame. They think they're behind. They think they have no discipline. They have no self-control, all of the above. And so sharing my story, having this conversation with you, showing your story, showing testimonials, it just helps people to see, okay, I'm not alone. And then also helping them to understand what shame's job is to get you to stay where you are.
Right.
And because it's familiar, even though you don't want to be there, it's like, but shame wants you to stay there. And so helping them to really overcome that is huge. And helping them to see, sometimes I think a lot of women don't want to deal with it. They're like, I'll deal with it later. I've got time, because they think that they're going to have to probably indulge in this frugal toxicity you talk about.
Yes, exactly. This frugal living
Yes.
thing. Yes.
And so that's why I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Fidelity Investments just recently, a couple years ago, they did a money mindset study that showed that women, 76% of the people surveyed think that in order to build wealth or save or invest or any of that stuff, they have to cut back on the things that bring them joy. And so when you think that your brain's job is to seek pleasure and to avoid pain, that sounds so painful. So the brain is like, well, you've got time. We'll get to it later. Let's look at that tomorrow. And it just never comes. So having those conversations and helping people see that you don't have to live this frugal, boring life filled with deprivation and denial in order to build wealth. So I would love to have you talk about that frugal toxicity and how that is actually, it backfires because it's not sustainable. If that's not who you are, okay, there are some people who are really frugal to the core. Like they are just, that's just who they are, and that's fine. But if that's not who you are, you don't have to become that in order to build wealth.
Yeah, I think it's funny though, because frugality, I actually believe when it's toxic, right? I think there's nothing wrong with being smart with your money, which means,
right.
If you ever feel that you're wasting money, that's not being like a frugal tightwad. That's just being honest about values or the value you're receiving for where your money's going, et cetera. For me, I had gotten really caught up in the spend less on everything, which I think is the vision that most people have for wealth building. And that came from, let's be real, the Dave Ramsey course that I came in to, because, he is yelling at, if you want to get out of debt, you better run. He is coming. You better get right. Like, and he just, and I still have like Dave's
a little trauma.
Yeah, I have Dave trauma. He was definitely a great beginner source for me, but I became married to this idea that spending money equaled bad. Like if I care about my future, I have to stop spending money. And the way that this manifested for me was not just like the overthinking Starbucks orders, or I used to like flip weird things on Marketplace, like cloth diapers to make extra money and stuff. I feel the biggest example of this is when I did get out of debt. So we got out of debt. We did that very quickly. We had, for me, I worked this soul sucking sales job to get out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And to celebrate, we had, had our emergency fund, we bought a house and had our first child. And we're like, let's celebrate. We have worked so hard, right? I grew up my mom was a flight attendant, so I love traveling. It's very fun for me. It's like, let's go to Paris. So I know the cheapest flight to Paris. Like I had done it all right. I budgeted out. I had the money all there. I had saved for it. And I hit purchase on my tickets and I had an anxiety attack. And I called a friend and I remember saying, I just can't, like, this is so wasteful. Why am I doing this? Right. And I went into this whole head shame thing. And I look back at that and I'm like, that's toxic frugality. Because when we get into this mode that spending is bad, it doesn't actually matter what financial goals you hit because you've committed to a deeply unhappy relationship with money. I can't enjoy my money. And that in itself is a over kind of pendulum swing. And so one of the things we focus on in our coaching is when someone is paying off debt, we want to make sure that they don't swing there. The relationship you have with money doesn't change when you hit certain financial milestones. And I feel that I've seen that clearly with clients. I've seen it clearly in my life, which is why your relationship with money, whether you have debt today, whether you have savings, whether you have investments, is the most powerful thing you have in your financial goals. Because even if you're in the mountaintop and you've hit those goals, if you've committed to this deeply unhappy relationship with spending and money, that's affecting like 70% of your life. It's affecting how you work. It's affecting how you relax. It's affecting your family. And I think that is why I'm against toxic frugality so bad, because I don't care what financial goal you're trying to hit. I care that you don't get into this very unhealthy relationship with your money that does more harm than it does good.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head with that, because how you get there is how you will be there. So if while you're going, through your journey, if you're being super frugal, not enjoying life, not celebrating, which is unfortunately how it's taught in some of the personal finance spaces. So of course, if that's been your habit for the last, I don't know how long it took you to get out of debt. Do you remember how long it took you?
It was 10 months, but it was about a year of it really stressing, like, our engagement, whatever. I see that whole year.
Yeah. So, I mean, a habit is formed way sooner than a year. So you've created this habit, and then we imagine that when we get there, we're going to just all of a sudden be different. But your brain is like, no, we have to continue to be this way. So I love how you articulated that so good, because it's so true. And that's why when you do it those really restrictive ways, some people do get to the finish line that way, especially if you don't have a ton. Like I had a lot. I had over 200,000. And so I knew that I was willing to do it the way it was taught, but my husband was just like, who are you? What have you done with my wife? Rewind, back up. Yes, we have to fix our money, but we can't do it that way. And that's when the light bulb moment went off, like, oh, why do we even have to? So I didn't even do it his way. I was willing to, but I didn't. And so I think that's why once we got to the end, I didn't really have anything to undo. But I will share this. So one of the things that we did follow was the debt snowball.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, we did follow that. And we did set aside some money for like enjoying life and things like that. But everything else went towards the debt. And we had a small amount for our emergency fund. So what I found was once we were out of debt, I thought we were going to be able to save like super, super easily. But we weren't able to, because again, our brain was programmed to get money in and send it away. Even though we were sending it on debt, we weren't keeping it. We weren't having it. We didn't learn how to keep money. So that's something that I learned. I was like, oh, okay, this is a very good learning. And so in my program, I don't teach only save this little bit amount of money and then just go hard on your debt, because I feel like you should be saving along the way so you have that habit built up. Cool. So another thing you talk about a lot is financial dieting. If you've been listening and realizing that money is the one area you just can't seem to figure out, even though you're successful everywhere else, hear me when I say this. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that traditional money advice wasn't made for women like you. Women who earn good money, want to build wealth, and still enjoy their lives. My clients all start where you are, paying off the same credit cards over and over again, saving up to a certain amount only to spend it back down, or feeling like based on their income, they should be so much further along by now. But with my help, they change all of that. One client paid off over $11,000 in credit card debt and never ran it back up again. Another saved $5,000 in just 2 months. And another went on multiple vacations without going back into credit card debt. They are not special unicorns. They're women just like you, great at making money and ready to finally get great at not only enjoying it, but also keeping it and growing it. So if you've been listening and thinking she's talking directly to me, this invitation is for you. Don't keep pushing this off. You and I can fix this together, privately, safely, and without judgment. All you have to do is go to jermainefoley.com/consult to book your wealth building strategy consultation or click on the link in the show notes. Let's finally get you unstuck with money.
Yes. And I think that that's exactly what you just hit on, where you talk about like, I'm going to change my lifestyle and I'm going to be this frugal franny and I'm, going to pack lunch every day and eat bologna sandwiches and rice and beans for dinner. And this is kind of when we pretend we're somebody else. And I think that we do this to try to hit goals faster, but what it ends up doing is burning us out. Just like dieting leads to binge eating, it's the same thing with spending. When we get into these very restrictive mindsets when we plan, which is often where a lot of women come, is we start to look at our money when it becomes unavoidable, when a certain debt balance really throws us off. We have something happen at work. We go to a friend's house and we see what they have and we realize, I want to have that, right? I don't really know what catalyst somebody's going through, but usually when there's a strong catalyst, it makes us do something stress oriented with our money, which I call like a stress plan, right? Most people do this stress plan, which is a financial diet. And then they'll say, about 3 weeks later, I couldn't stick to it. Yeah. And so therefore I'm really bad at money. It's like somebody saying, well, I've had all these diets that I've tried before and diets don't work for me. I'm just going to be out of shape and unhappy for the rest of my life or whatever it might be. Right. And there's a difference between making a lifestyle change that's good and in alignment with you and sustainable versus getting on a crash diet. And I think most people, when they're on their own or they have these influences that are stressing them out so intensely of, oh God, I have to make this big change, they kind of throw themselves into that diet because they just want to see something fast. And what they end up doing is really burning out. And then they usually end up spending more as a result. Right.
Isn't that interesting? So let's say they were able to pay off a nice chunk of debt. They get right back in it. And then if they were able to pile some cash up in the savings account, they spend it down because, to your point, it's unsustainable and they're using willpower and willpower runs out. And so that is so good. I like that term, financial dieting, because dieting, to me, money and food and dieting, it just goes hand in hand. And neither one of them work. So you might as well commit to a lifestyle change that is sustainable, that is based off of something you can actually commit to and be willing for it might take a little longer going this way, but it's sustainable. It'll last forever.
And there's an identity shift that happens when you start to have wins. So when you have decades and decades or years and years of this binge fail, it's very easy to feel this is the only outcome. And so I think that's why quick wins at the beginning are so important, like with the debt snowball, with the audit that we do with clients, when we help them align with their values, when we start to brainstorm, how can we actually get more money towards your values? Like there's a lot of exciting stuff that comes from working on your money. And I'll give you like a few examples, right? We immediately think of what has to leave my life.
Yep.
How do I have to take on more time at work? How do I, spend less at the grocery store? And it's all these negative images we have, where other consequences of working on your money means that you get to spend more money on the things you really care about. You get clearer with your spouse about your financial goals and discover the ones you really have in common and how much unity you and your partner have about money, which is very different than what you've lived in the past. You actually start to save money in your own fun money budget, or whatever, you call it, a bucket, a line item. And you realize, oh my gosh, like it feels so good to go shopping now when I've got this, I feel more stacked. Like I don't feel guilty about spending money. You don't, you say, oh, I want to plan a trip. And maybe I don't want to go to my parents 4 times this year. And I want to finally go to Europe because I've said I've wanted to bring my family to Europe. And then you get to plan that trip, right? Or you get to say, yes, I have enough money saved that I can finally switch careers. And I have the buffer to get me through this career change. Like the byproduct of working on your money, I think that the positives far outweigh the negative. Oh, yeah. And I think that that's the part that people, they don't get to experience because they're stuck in this binge diet cycle.
Yes.
That I think that's what's so fun about coaching too, is helping people unlock what it is for them. Because when you read financial books or you're Googling online, there is nobody who has the same values as you in the same way. And if you found that person, great. But most of us are individuals. And so having a personalized plan that excites you, I think is a whole nother level of excitement rather than watching some financial influencer or, Susie Orman, whatever she did, right? Yeah. Like, that doesn't have to be your path. And I think that's what a lot of the personal finance world has gotten wrong, is we, in the past, have really projected onto people, this is exactly what you want, and this is how you want it, and this is how you're going to do it. And I think people are smart enough to know we can pave our own path. We might need some help along the way to learn how to do it, but we can pave our own path.
Yeah. And there's not just one way to do it. And I think, to your point, the projection has been there's only one way, and it is deprivation, denial, and frugality. But the truth is, I'm a living witness. It's not. It is not. And I think when more people understand that, they are open to it and they're not wasting time. Because you think about like how much time people waste by not getting help, by not starting. That's money lost that they're not even investing because they feel like they're just waiting and wasting time. So they're missing out on compounding interest, the eighth wonder of the world, when they could have started so long ago if they just knew that they didn't have to give up everything in order to get their money under control.
Yeah. And that's what I always like to remind people when, I talk about my story and the amount of financial freedom we have. I always tell people, like, listen, I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't make a lot of money. The only thing I did is I started when I was younger. Yeah. That's it. Like, you can do it now. And this is what you will tell yourself in 10 years, you'll wish you would have done. Right. So it's like the sooner we can get to that finish line where we've said, okay, I have the plan. I'm enjoying my money. I'm out of high interest debt. And now I'm learning how to make my money compound, which is, I feel like that's exactly what we focus on in coaching, is like, how can we get somebody there? Because then it's like, there's more money to do everything, right? Like, women with more money have more choices in life. And it's not just about a number in a bank account. It's about the legacy, the impact you want to have, the way you want to spend your life, right? Money just magnifies that. It gives you more choices to magnify it. And so I think that, it's really important for people to know you don't have to be extraordinary to start to see the benefits of financial freedom in your life. You just have to get started.
That's it. You just got to start. So to that point, what would you say to women who they're like, okay, help me understand this. I'm already in debt. I barely have any savings. Yes, I make good money, but how does it make sense to spend money or invest money to learn how to handle money? How do you handle that question?
I mean, I think this is a great question that you're asking to a fellow financial coach. Because normally I like to actually ask that question back, which is, so far you haven't spent money. How have your results been? Have you seen the results that you want?
Yeah.
Are you further, right? In most women who come to a coach, I think it's important that before you come to a financial coach, you should give it a go. Like,
Oh, yeah.
this is not rocket science. Personal finance is not rocket science. We don't have any secrets, any like, oh, we have the secrets of wealth here, right? Like, none of that. Everything information wise that you and I talk about is available for free on the internet. The only thing that isn't is the accountability and us giving you insight into what we're seeing based on helping other people through the same goal that you've been through. And I think we also have like our own methods and ways that we've come up with tips to make it faster and to help people implement faster. But if someone can do it on their own, I say go for it, right? Like do it, make your plan and do it. Many people are successful with that. There's a whole other group of people who have done that path. They've downloaded the apps, they've done the courses, and they haven't seen the results that they want. They probably would benefit from working with someone one-on-one or someone who's actually going to help them be accountable. And chances are there's something going on with their mindset that they haven't discovered yet. So like there's tips like, I'm trying to do this, but why isn't it working? And it's like, I've noticed that the way you talk about your job, right? Like there's always something else going on that sometimes just like a person.
Yeah.
Is the one who can tell you and the one who can start to sense and coach you through. I think that's why people hire financial coaches, is because they know what to do.
They're not doing it.
They're not doing it, or it's not working. And that's the perfect time to say, I can waste another 5 years doing this on my own, or I can make an investment in myself, which is really what coaching is making an investment in yourself, being committed to yourself that you will get this outcome. Are going to feel confident with your money, and you're going to use every tool that your coach has at their disposal, which is vast, to help you get there. It's that makes magic.
I love that. And I would also say a coach is someone who you can share your deepest money stuff with, like stuff you don't want to talk about with anyone else. And they're there to hold space for you without judgment, without any of that, and to help you see things differently. Also, let's just be real. You mentioned this earlier, Nicole, where I forgot how you said it, but you make progress. Maybe it was with financial dieting. And then something happens where you're off track, and then you just beat yourself up and say, hey, I'm just bad with money. A coach is going to help you to get back on track.
Yes.
Because the biggest thing I think with what happens when people are doing this alone is that when they do hit a bump, an unplanned expense, something didn't go right, the last thing they do is give themselves grace and say, and troubleshoot. They want to beat themselves up and then they quit. See, I'm bad with money. This doesn't work for me. So I think that's also the power of a coach too, is just helping you get on track, stay on track, troubleshoot when things go wrong, be there to help you to make decisions. We don't tell you what to do, but we guide and support and provide that accountability if you want it. And then to me, the ROI is off the charts, because once you get it, there's no going back. And all the progress you make, the interest you're no longer paying to credit card companies, the money you're no longer overspending, the investments, how they're growing and compounding, and just like think about all of that. And then the money you make, my clients usually make more money. Yours probably do too, because you're just so into that. Like it just magically happens. So yeah, it's such an investment in yourself, and it's an investment in your future too.
And if you feel really, it's about how you feel about your own results, right? Like, I don't know why this image is coming to me, but it's like anybody can play soccer. It's a really fun game, right? Like we can all play, we can go to the field, we can learn the rules. But if you have a dream that you want to be a competitive soccer player and you're trying to do it on your own, you're probably going to have much more success by working with someone who's helped other soccer players
Yes.
so professional, right? Because they see what you're not seeing. They help you stay
Mhm.
on track. They help you, in ways that you haven't been able to help yourself. And so if you're on the track to do it how you want, go for it. If you're not, what is the harm
Mhm.
getting help to get you to where you want to be?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think
Like,
sometimes it's, oh, it might not work for me, or I'm going to waste money and things like that. But what if none of that was true? What if it did work for you? And what if you actually didn't waste money, but you made money? So our brains always want to go to the negative, but you have to think about, okay, what about the positive side? And I love that analogy, because sports, there is not one sports athlete, or even high school sports. People have coaches and private tutors. And I know for my kids, we had private everything. So yeah, I just like to have that conversation with someone other than myself.
I think that it's one of those things that when you're not getting the results that you want and you're capable of more, that's when you want to talk to.
And let yourself dream, because your brain is going to try to talk you out of it because it wants you to stay where you are. But let yourself see, like, what if it does work? What if my entire life changes? You got to let your brain see the other side. Oh my gosh, Nicole, this was so good. Do you have something else you want to add?
When you think about the cost of coaching, one of the questions that I've asked myself when I've enrolled in certain coaching programs is, especially ones that aren't, life changing, but it's like, it's stretched to do it. I ask myself, wow, do I really not believe in myself X amount of money's worth? Do I not think I can make, right? Like me, and if I can make back what I'm investing, because that's the other thing is like you can hold yourself accountable. And I think
Yeah.
that's the power of coaching too. That, I mean, not saying like you don't guide people and whatever, but that's the way I view myself, where I say like, is my confidence in myself really this low that I don't think I'll make $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or if that's what coaching costs, or a few, whatever it might be. And I think that's a whole nother conversation to have, where it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't want to be the person that doesn't believe in myself that amount. Where can
Yeah.
where do I believe in myself? And maybe it's not hiring a coach one-on-one, but start somewhere where you push yourself to believe just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's the only place where financial success is 100% impossible. It's when you decide it's not possible. That's the only end game. That's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Once you've decided that, there's no coach, there's no book, there's no program, there's no job you can get. There's nothing, because you have decided that it's not possible for you. And that's a tragedy. And so even deciding in what, small way it can be possible, I think is the beginning. And then you
Yeah.
start to get more wins and more confidence in yourself. But I think that most people have that confidence in themselves if they can kind of look at it straight in the face and say, I can save a few $1,000s, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
I
can
think
make
at
this
least
make sense.
that I can do this, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
it's worth it to bet on yourself a little bit.
100%. Yeah. And to also think of it like it's all you. So the thing about financial coaching, you don't have to have someone else involved. You don't have to bring someone else along. It's all about you just doing what you need to do. And you have someone to help you with that. So it's not like some coaching, it's you. You have to take action, but it's also dependent on someone else taking some action. But
Mhm.
for financial coaching, it's all you. You just have to control you and be the person that you want to be. So that's so good. So, Nicole, can you please share how people can stay connected with you if they want to learn more about you and just be a part of your world?
Yeah, if you are someone who enjoyed our conversation, you feel like I speak your language, you can always look us up at arise.financial. We put out a ton of free content on Instagram. We do free investing classes for women. And if you're like, I want to just go straight to chatting with you about working with you, you can always apply on our website for one-on-one financial coaching at arise.financial.
Awesome. I will have all of those links in the show notes. And Nicole, thank you so much for this conversation. It was so rich, so good. And I think a lot of people are going to get so much from it. Thank you. All right. I will see you all next week. Bye bye. Hey, if money is the one area of life you just can't seem to figure out, even though you make good money, you're not alone. That's why you're invited to book a complimentary one-to-one money consultation with me so that we can figure out how to solve your biggest money challenges. To sign up, simply go to jermainefoley.com/consult or check out the show notes. Hope to meet you soon.